Well, joining me live now is New Orleans City Councilmember Jean-Paul Morrell. Jean-Paul, appreciate your time. We've got devastating reports this hour that the New Orleans coroner has updated the death toll to 15.
Yes, that's what we're hearing as well. There were a tremendous amount of people that were injured, had very critical injuries. The initial death toll was 10 on the scene. That has now been updated to 15. That is correct. And there are other critically injured people, so that number could go higher.
How many people do you estimate were in the French Quarter at the time of the attack?
The French Quarter is an extremely popular tourist destination. Bourbon Street is really kind of the lifeline, the central heartbeat of the French Quarter. Tens of thousands of people easily. I mean, this is the day before the Sugar Bowl, which is a nationally televised playoff game for the college football series. So there could have been tens of thousands, if not more, along Bourbon Street at that time.
What are you
hearing? The early morning.
Yeah. What are you hearing about the ongoing threat to the community there?
Well, it's been challenging. Initially, there was obviously the original attack. As we've been continually briefed throughout the day, it has become apparent that this was not a solo attack, and this was not a one-off with one person doing something. There have been some suspicious packages that have been found, some potential IEDs that have been detonated. So there is an ongoing all-hands-on-board effort to try and uncover not just the history and the efforts of the individual who did the attack, but any potential accomplices.
So, Jean-Paul, just to confirm, are you hearing that an IED has been detonated?
Well, typically what happens is that when you have a terrorist incident, when you have suspected packages that could be an IED, sometimes they pre-destroy them so that they won't detonate. So
in a controlled setting,
as far as a confirmed IED, I can't tell you for sure if any or how many, because what they do is they preemptively detonate them. They go through the package, and it could be an IED. It could be a leftover box with something in it. They don't find that till after effect. So the FBI is going to update us on that, but there were two packages or two instances in which they are fairly confident that they were likely IEDs that were discovered, and there has been an effort to go through our downtown area, French Quarter in particular, has the equivalent of New York's cameras all around. What the FBI, local and state and governmental officials are going through is combing through that footage, combing through all the evidence available to identify, if and who these other people were that did this stuff. So it's very early on in the investigation. We are very limited in what we can share specifically because they're still trying to uncover and find who these other individuals are. And that's what we have available right now that we can share.
How was a car able to drive around bollards and hit a New Year's crowd like this?
Well, essentially what the person did is we had some bollards that were installed that were temporarily inoperable. There were vehicles being used, NOPD vehicles, our police department, were blocking the streets. The street was blocked. The individual went on the sidewalk. And the sidewalk does not have bollards, and the sidewalk was not blocked as substantially as the street is because, typically speaking, that's not something, when you look at these attacks across the world, people historically have not used the sidewalk as their mechanism to get back on the street to do something like this. Now, what that says is twofold. One, we both locally, nationally, and internationally are now going to have to look at sidewalks as other soft targets that can be used to negotiate back on the streets. But more importantly, with the speed in which he did this, I mean, he took to the sidewalk immediately to navigate past the bollards and to get access to the crowd. It really speaks to a level of organization because it was planned. I mean, the way he maneuvered the vehicle, what he did specifically, we'll find out in the coming days how far ahead he planned this, but it was planned. And then you add to the mix, the vehicle that was used was purchased through Turo, which is kind of like a peer-to-peer car rental, very similar like the Airbnb of cars, which is not heavily regulated. So you rented a vehicle in this very a way that you could have rented a vehicle with crypto coins, for example. So you rented a vehicle in this through a disruptive community. He stayed at an Airbnb, and obviously there was some prep potentially done at the Airbnb. That's also a way where they're not as heavily regulated as a hotel. The opportunities for people to see something and say something is less likely at an Airbnb than is in a hotel room. So if someone were preparing for a terrorist attack, making IEDs, a maid or someone next door could figure that out. When you're at an Airbnb, that's less likely to happen. So there's a lot of stuff that we're looking at in hindsight, a lot of things that we're going to have to go and take a really hard look at and see how we can learn from this, because it's a horrific incident that has scarred this very resilient city. But we are a resilient city. We've survived Katrina. We've survived hurricanes. We've survived everything. We'll come out of this stronger. But in this instance, we have 200 officers. I really want to highlight, we had 3 officers when the vehicle was finally stopped that came out, and they pretty much eliminated this threat instantaneously. Looking what was in the vehicle, at those 3 officer heroes not reacted instantly, this could have been hundreds of times worse.
Yeah, Jean-Paul, unfortunately we're out of time, but we really appreciate you coming on the program. Thanks so much.